A nationwide public health alert for ground beef over the risk of E. coli. The U.S. Department of Agriculture's Food Safety and Inspection Service says raw ground beef items should not be eaten.
Ground beef, if you've got any in your fridge right now, more than 120,000 pounds of ground beef products are being recalled because of possible E. coli contamination.
The holding company behind the largest meat packer on your grocery shelf stood up in a United States federal court and pleaded guilty to years of bribery. The beef that same empire packs is legally allowed to carry a bacteria that has killed American children because the government does not count that bacteria as a defect. 8 names come off your shopping list tonight, 5 earn their way onto it, and every receipt is a public document you can pull yourself. Everything you're about to hear comes from paper anyone can pull: a court docket, federal recall notices, a written guilty plea, and a handful of rules the government wrote and quietly hoped you'd never read. The front of the pack sells you a story, and the receipt tells you the truth. Subscribe before we start, because that label is never going to volunteer any of this on its own, and it all starts with the cheapest tube in the store. Number 8, great value. You grab it because it's the cheapest red pound in the store, sealed, cold, in the cart before you've even thought about it. And that's exactly the front they want you looking at. Here's the receipt. On that label, only 2 words are actually working in your favor, and they're the words ground beef, because by federal law, that phrase means no added water, no phosphates, no binders, no extenders. Those 2 words are the only genuinely honest thing on the package, while everything printed around them is engineered to tell you nothing. No cut named, no grind date, no farm, no slaughterhouse, and very often no origin you can act on. The one job that label does perfectly is hiding where the animal lived and how it died. And that matters more here than anywhere else in the store because of how the tube actually gets filled. A single industrial batch of ground beef blends trimmings from a whole lot of different animals. And Darren Detweiler, a food safety academic at Northeastern, estimates one centralized batch can pull from up to about 400 head of cattle. So picture your 1 pound as a reunion of an entire herd, because that's when the math turns ugly. One sick animal carrying E. coli 0157 H7 can seed thousands of pounds of product spread across a dozen states, and you'd never taste it, never smell it, never see it coming. In the worst cases, that infection doesn't stop at a bad night, because the Shiga toxin gets into the bloodstream and starts attacking the lining of the kidneys, and the CDC spells out exactly what that looks like in a body. Urine slows to almost nothing. The color drains out of the face. Bruises appear with no cause. Blood shows up where it shouldn't be. And a child goes quiet and unresponsive as the organs start to shut down. It hits the youngest and the oldest the hardest. And there's no antibiotic that reverses it once it starts. We know precisely what that looks like because it already happened. And it's the reason the rules exist at all. Over the winter of 1992 into 1993, undercooked patties from one chain carried that exact strain and sickened 732 people across 4 states. And 4 small children didn't survive it. One of them 6 years old, one of them just 17 months. They died from a hamburger. That outbreak is the entire reason the government finally declared E. coli 0157H7 an illegal adulterant in ground beef in 1994, which means it took dead kids to get a single bacteria banned from your beef. Hold that word adulterant, because it comes back at number 3, and when it does, it's so much worse than you think. Your move on this one is small and it works. Turn the tube over and find the establishment number, the letters EST, and a few digits, because that's the actual plant that packed it, and it's the only traceable thing on the whole package. Hold on to those digits, because in a few minutes, they're going to connect stores that pretend to be rivals. Verdict: it fails on sourcing and it fails on marketing accuracy. Not because of anything in it, but because of everything it refuses to say. And there's still a thing allowed to be inside that tube that nobody has to declare at all. Number 7, Kroger. It's your regular store, the one that feels local, with its own name printed on its own beef. And here's the receipt, it's the sameness. The logo on the front of that tube is the retailer, not the company that made what's inside it. Because store-brand case-ready beef is packed by the same tiny handful of giants you're about to meet, then dressed up in a dozen different store logos across a dozen different chains. It's the lesson this channel keeps slamming into, and it's worth saying one more time. Brands aren't honest or dishonest. Stores aren't honest or dishonest. Products are, and traceability is. And there's a specific thing the case-ready system is allowed to fold in without ever telling you. For years, the whole country panicked about lean, finely textured beef. The fatty trimmings warmed up, spun in a centrifuge to separate the lean, and treated with ammonia gas to kill pathogens. And here's the part the panic got wrong, and the part it never reached. It was never injected into everything, so the fear itself was overstated. But in December of 2018, the USDA's Food Safety and Inspection Service determined that product meets the regulatory definition of ground beef, which means it can be labeled simply ground beef, with no separate line and no disclosure. There's no Federal Register rule for it and no published decision letter because it was handled as a quiet label approval, and it was never announced to a single shopper. So sit in that gap for a second, because it's the entire game. The thing you were told to fear turned out to be smaller than the story, and the thing that's actually true is quieter and worse. Because since 2018, if it's in your beef, the label isn't required to say so, and on a store brand tube that already names nothing, it won't. That's the promise the disclosure quietly broke, and you can no longer check it. Your move takes 30 seconds. Next time you're in 2 different chains in 1 week, photograph the establishment numbers on both store brand tubes. And don't be surprised when it turns out to be different aprons, same loading dock. Verdict: it fails on sourcing and on marketing accuracy. Number 6, product of USA. It's the little American flag on the front, and that flag has been lying to shoppers for years, because until 7 months ago, the lie was completely legal. Here's the receipt. Until the 1st of January this year, beef born and raised in another country, Brazil, Uruguay, Australia, could be shipped to the United States, merely processed, or even just repackaged here, and then legally stamped product of USA. That wasn't a loophole somebody discovered. That was the rule exactly as written. So you were buying a flag, and the animal underneath it may never have set foot in this country. And the flag isn't the only word doing quiet work on that label. Look for grass-fed and you'd naturally assume the government stands behind it, but it doesn't. Because back in 2016, the USDA withdrew its own official standard for the grass-fed marketing claim, which means that on a plain supermarket package, no federal definition polices that word anymore. A company prints it, and then it largely grades its own homework. The USDA did finally fix the product of USA claim in a rule finalized in March of 2024 and made mandatory this January. So the flag now has to mean born, raised, slaughtered, and processed here, and that's a real fix. But sit with the fact that for years, the most patriotic-looking label in the meat case was quietly the least trustworthy thing there. If this is useful so far, A-like genuinely helps push it to people still buying on the flag alone. Your move here: read the origin line on the back, not the flag on the front. Verdict: it fails on marketing accuracy. Number 5, Tyson Fresh Meats. It's the name you already trust from the chicken bag, standing quietly behind your beef too. Before the receipt, hold on to one number for me: 85%. Put it in your pocket because it lands at number 3 and it explains the whole night. Here's Tyson's receipt. Tyson is a defendant in the sprawling federal beef antitrust case in the District of Minnesota, where buyers allege the biggest packers conspired for years to inflate the price of beef. And in May of 2026, a judge approved an $87.5 million consumer settlement, with $55 million of that coming from Tyson. Now here's the sentence that has to ride with that. And it isn't a technicality. No court has ruled these companies did anything wrong. They deny every allegation. And a settlement is not an admission of guilt, but the pattern is a matter of federal record. 4 companies, repeated antitrust checks written while admitting nothing. And there's a structural reason 4 companies can move like one industry. According to the USDA's own economic research service, the 4 largest packers, buy about 85% of America's fed cattle. And in 1980, that number was 36%. Your move is the establishment number again, because most store beef traces back to one of these four. Verdict: it fails on legal record. And number 4 is where this stops being about companies and becomes about one young woman. Number 4, Cargill Meat Solutions. It's a company most shoppers couldn't pick out of a lineup, sitting behind more of your beef than any brand you'd recognize. And here's the receipt: it's a person. In 2007, a 22-year-old dance instructor in Minnesota named Stephanie Smith ate a frozen hamburger patty that carried E. coli 0157H7. The Shiga toxin triggered hemolytic uremic syndrome. She spent 9 weeks in a coma, and she came out of it paralyzed from the waist down. Cargill recalled 844,000 pounds. Then the New York Times did the thing nobody else had. When Michael Moss traced the trimmings in that one patty back through the supply chain and found they'd come from 4 different slaughterhouses across 2 countries, including Uruguay. 1 patty, 4 plants, 2 continents. That reporting won the Pulitzer Prize. Her case against Cargill settled. Terms confidential, no verdict of liability, and that matters, so I'm saying it plainly. This is the 400-animal batch from number 8, turned into a human being who never walked again. And it isn't history. In May of 2024, Cargill recalled more than 16,000 pounds of ground beef sold at Walmart over possible E. coli 0157H7, pulled from a dozen states, so that's 17 years apart. Same pathogen, same blending, same company, and the same store you'll meet at number 1. Your move is the only real defense there is, because against a batch built from hundreds of animals, you want one animal ground in store from a single cut or a named single-source farm, and we get to the ones actually doing that before the end. Verdict: it fails on sourcing and on legal record, and it trips our safety override. Number 3 is the biggest of all of them, and it's the only name tonight with a guilty plea attached. Number 3, JBS. It's a name printed on almost nothing in your store, sitting behind an enormous share of everything in it. Here's the first receipt. In October of 2018, JBS's plant in Tulsa, Arizona, recalled nearly 7 million pounds of beef. And that December, the recall grew by another 5.2 million, which comes to more than 12 million pounds of product out of one building in one salmonella outbreak in 1 year. The CDC's final count was 403 people sick across 30 states, with 117 of them hospitalized. And if you lined 12 million quarter-pound patties up end to end, you'd get a wall of beef running past the horizon, all of it from one plant. Now here's the part that should stop you cold, and it pays off the word from number 8. They recalled all of that beef voluntarily, because when it comes to salmonella, the government could only ask them nicely. Remember adulterant? The word it took 4 dead children to attach to E. coli, because salmonella never got that word. And to this day, the USDA doesn't classify salmonella as an adulterant in raw beef. That means beef testing positive for it can still be stamped, inspected, and passed, then legally sold to you. So one of the most common causes of foodborne death in this country is not, in the government's eyes, a defect. It's a passenger it tolerates. Read that twice, because it's the quietest and grimmest thing in this whole video. And here's the second receipt, the hardest document of the night. JBS is controlled by Brazil's Batista family through a holding company called J&F Investimentos. And in October of 2020, J&F pleaded guilty in a United States federal court to conspiring to violate the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, paying a criminal penalty of more than $256 million. It admitted in writing to bribing officials for years to build the empire that now packs your beef, and that isn't an allegation, that's a guilty plea. Now take that number back out of your pocket. 4 companies buy about 85% of America's fed cattle, and 2 of them are Brazilian-controlled. If you've made it this deep, subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of receipt we pull every single week. Verdict: it fails on sourcing and on legal record, and it trips the override. Number 2 is the beef that was never American in the first place. Number 2, National Beef. If you've never heard the name, that's precisely the point, because it's very likely in your cart right now under a store's logo. National Beef is one of the 4 packers behind that 85%, and it's 81.7% owned by Marfrig, a Brazilian company. So the American beef on the American shelf, under that little American flag from number 6, is in large part cut and packed by companies headquartered in another hemisphere. The flag was selling you a feeling, but the ownership paperwork tells a colder story. And unlike the flag, the paperwork is public and checkable. This is the quiet reveal sitting under the whole night. You were trained to worry about a scary chemical someone might have sneaked into the meat. But the real story was never a secret injection. It was consolidation and foreign control, and a labeling system built with just enough missing lines to keep you from connecting any of it yourself. Your move here isn't a flip test. It's a habit. Read who processed it, not who's selling it. Verdict: it fails on sourcing and on marketing accuracy. And number 1 is the store you trust most, quietly becoming the company you were never supposed to notice. Number 1, Walmart. It's the store about a quarter of American grocery spending runs through. The everyday tube most of the country buys on total autopilot. And here's the receipt. It isn't a scandal, it's a shift. And it's bigger than any single scandal, because in June of 2025, Walmart opened its first owned and operated case-ready beef plant in Olathe, Kansas, more than 300,000 square feet, with Angus cattle sourced through a Nebraska packer it holds a stake in. And according to the Kansas governor's office, a $257 million investment feeding 600 stores. So follow the line all the way through tonight. The store sells you the beef, and now the store cuts and packs the beef too, which means the store increasingly writes its own traceability record and decides for itself what its own origin label is allowed to say. Mike Calicrate, who runs Ranch Foods Direct and has spent decades on the independent rancher side of this, put the whole problem in one sentence. His words: he said our industry is in real trouble until we start enforcing antitrust laws. And remember that May 2024, Cargill recall from number 4, the E. coli one, landed right here on these shelves. Some of you shop this store every week, and you're already writing the comment defending it. Write it. I read them. Tell me whether a store owning the whole chain, from the animal all the way to your cart, makes you trust your beef more or less. Because I think it's a genuinely open question, and I want to see how it splits down there. Verdict: it fails on sourcing and on marketing accuracy. And the concern here is trust and traceability, nothing else. Before the good news, here are 3 receipts from the last 8 months, so nobody watching thinks any of this is old history. In May of 2026, an FSIS public health alert, still listed as active, covered beef kofta sold in California with 9 confirmed illnesses and E. coli O157, H7 found in the product. In February of 2026, CS beef packers recalled almost 23,000 pounds over a different E. coli strain. And in December of 2025, Mountain West Food Group pulled about 2,800 pounds over E. coli O26 across 6 states. And that last one was a grass-fed retail product, which is worth saying out loud right before the next section, because paying more is an immunity, and traceability isn't a force field. All it actually buys you is that when something goes wrong, they can find it fast and pull a small amount instead of 12 million pounds. Now let me show you who's doing this properly, because 5 of them honestly are. 5 names earned their way onto your list, not one of them made it there for being expensive. And every single one is here because of something a real person actually did. Number 5, White Oak Pastures. This farm is the reason a town in Georgia still exists, because Bluffton had been emptying out for decades, the way small farm towns quietly do. And then this one farm became the largest private employer in the county, and the jobs came back to the same land the cattle graze on. Most cattle in this country are born in one state, fattened in another, and killed in a third, hundreds of miles apart. But White Oak does all of it on the same ground, in its own USDA-inspected abattoirs. One honest note, because you should hear it from us and not stumble onto it later. In March of 2026, FSIS issued a public health alert on one production date of its grass-fed beef after consumers reported metal fragments. Though it wasn't a recall, the product had already sold through and there were no confirmed injuries. You deserve to know that before you spend $1. Your label tell here is the simplest one in the whole video, a farm that will name the actual field. Number 4, force of nature. It has the cleanest record of anything we pulled, no FSIS recall, no lawsuit, no enforcement action in 5 years, and in a category like this one, that isn't luck. That's a choice somebody keeps making over and over. And what they publish is the good part, because their 2025 impact report puts more than 3.7 million acres under regenerative management across more than 900 partner ranches. And remember number 6, where the government walked away from the grass-fed standard entirely, because this is exactly why a real third-party seal matters now. Your label tell is the one that separates the real thing from the sticker, grass-fed and grass-finished. Both words, backed by a certification you can actually name. Grass-fed on its own can still be finished on grain. And that second word is the one that costs the producer money. Number 3, Whole Foods. And this is the direct answer to number 8 from a retailer. Whole Foods ground beef comes from a single animal per package, reground in store by in-house butchers, under a third-party animal welfare program with a step rating printed right on the pack. 1 cow, not 400. 2 honest notes, because praising a certification without knowing its limits is how you lose the people who already know. A Step 4 rating means pasture-raised, no feedlots, no routine hormones, but it doesn't require organic feed. And in June of 2025, there was an alert on an organic beef sold there, reported by the supplier itself, which is the argument for the system, not against it. Because when beef comes from one traceable animal, a problem gets found fast, and the recall stays small and narrow. That's what traceability actually buys. Your label tell, ask whether it's ground in store and single source, and look for that step number on the pack. Number 2, Aldi. This one is here to kill a specific idea, that buying honestly is something only comfortable people get to do. Aldi's Simply Nature organic ground beef is USDA, organic and 100% grass-fed, for about $6 a pound, while the premium brands in this category run $8 to $12. The recall record is clean, and I mean that literally. We read every Aldi US recall for the last 3 years, line by line. And then, because we do this properly, here's the honest part. That package is labeled a product of Uruguay and/or the US, and it's processed by National Beef, which you'll recognize from number 2 on the other list. But I'm leaving Aldi right here anyway, and here's exactly why. Nothing about that origin line is hidden, it's printed, it's checkable, and you now know precisely how to read it, which is more than that label was ever going to give you. Your label tell is that origin line itself. And if this is helping you shop, actually moves it further than you'd think. Number 1, Thousand Hills, and behind it, a farmer named Matt Meyer, and a network of family farms that now runs to around 50 of them. The cattle are what the company calls lifetime grazed, 100% grass-fed and grass-finished, no confinement, no grain byproducts. That's the formulation, and it isn't the reason it's first. This is. In July of 2025, Meyer's own farm near Clearwater, Minnesota, became the first Audubon-certified bird-friendly habitat in the state, and that's an ecologist walking the land and counting what actually lives on it. Grassland birds are among the fastest disappearing birds in North America, and somebody ran a beef business in a way that gave them somewhere to land, then let it be independently checked. And here's the part I honestly didn't expect when I started pulling this. You can buy it at Walmart and Target. The best beef in this entire video is sitting on the shelf of the store from number 1, which tells you the one thing this whole night has been circling from the start. The store isn't the enemy, the store isn't the hero either, and the product is the only thing that's honest or isn't. So here's the whole video in one move you can do in 3 seconds. Flip the package, and the first 2 words need to be ground beef, because those are the only 2 words that ban the added water, the binders and the extenders. If the front says beef patties instead, every one of those bans switches off. and nothing on that package has to tell you it did. Then read for where, when, and who. Product of USA finally means born, raised, slaughtered, and processed here. So look for a named farm, a grind date, or a butcher who'll grind a single cut right in front of you, because the fewer mystery words after the word beef, the better off you are. Every name on the avoid list tonight either hid where your beef came from, or admitted to something worse and counted on you never turning the package over. Send this to the one person you know who grabs the 6-pound tray on autopilot and never reads the back, because they're the reason this video exists. And subscribe, because next time we leave the food aisles completely and go after the bottle sitting in your shower.